Alright everybody, project for the day, replacing a PCV valve, positive crankcase ventilation valve, on a 97 Sol. This has the D16Y8 engine. This should be a simple task, but I'm going to let you know it's not, so I'm going to tell you the tricks. Stay tuned. Okay, on most Honda D series engines, which is the single cam up here, what you're going to find is that there's a vacuum line coming off of the intake manifold. It's going to head down through the intake manifold. Some of the older models, like the D16Z series, actually has a grommet right here between the first and second runner, and literally that PCV valve sits right in there. It's actually pretty easy to get to from on top. But if you notice on this Y8 engine, what you'll see is that that tube goes down. It just goes to a nice fat insulated tube. That insulated tube is to keep it from beating itself up on the metal of the intake manifold. And we're going to have to go underneath to find this PCV valve. So before we get too far underneath, we're going to need a couple of tools. One would be a flathead screwdriver, which we're going to use to help pry the tube off of the PCV valve, as well as the PCV valve out of the grommet. I'm going to take with me a pair of flint nose mini pliers, because there's not a whole lot of room to work underneath this car where we're going. And of course, you're going to need your replacement PCV valve. As you can see, we have put the car up onto ramps. I've got my pad underneath. I've already taken off the oil filter, which you will need to remove in order to get access to the PCV valve. Remember to have a drain pan, because you are going to get some drips coming down right off of that bracket there. And then we'll go from there. You can see my light underneath, so I'm going to show you where we're headed here. Alright, so that's another view of that same bracket coming in from the back of the car. Going underneath behind the block there, we're going to look up, and right up there behind that black plug that's sticking straight out, first of all you can see the threads for where the oil filter mates to the block. And then you've got a black plug that's going in that actually is for the NOx sensor on this engine. And then right above that, you're going to see a little blue. So just above that black plug, you'll see that blue ring with a clasp or a clamp next to it. That is the PCV valve. It is directly into the breather chamber on this engine. As you can see, not a whole lot of room to work up there. So what we're going to do is actually use our flint nose pliers, see if we can get hold of that clamp from the side, shimmy it off, pop the tube off, and then pry that PCV valve out. So I decided to go at this from a completely different way, because I tried to get those flint nose up there. That didn't work. So all I did was took this flat screwdriver, put it between chamber, the breather chamber, and the PCV valve. I'm going to pop that thing out to the side right there, get that thing free, and then I'm going to finagle that tube a little bit, because that'll be easier for me to work on the tube outside of the car. So we'll show you that in just a second. Alright, so I've come back up top. Again, this is our PCV line. Goes underneath of this protector, which runs the fuel injectors underneath. So what I'm going to do is just unclip all of my fuel injectors. And I'm going to just pivot that out of the way so I can easily now kind of finagle that tube underneath and up from down there. Work with it out of the car, drop it back through, do it the simple way. Okay, so in this diagram that I just pulled off of the Honda Parts website, we're looking at the tube that is labeled as number 7. That's for the D16Y8 engine, and then labeled 2 is the PCV valve. The part labeled 1 is the breather box. So that's the hose. Number 7 is the hose that you are actually removing, or that I am removing in this video. It will have the clamp already on, holding that PCV valve in place, so we're just going to snake that thing right up and out, replace the PCV valve outside of the engine bay, and then thread it back through. It ends up being much quicker and much easier. Alright, so I've removed the line there. I got the clamp pulled way back, slid off of there, off of the intake manifold. I'm just going to slide it out and under. I can pivot the rest of the tube now, and now I can just kind of work that whole assembly up and out. And there's our PCV valve. So what we're going to do is just drop this down here. Now we've got easy access to take care of that clamp. Alright, so again, we've got this out of the car. I've moved the clamp back off from there. I'm going to just try to work on twisting there. Got her loose. Pull that off. Barely shakes, barely any noise. I'm going to just go ahead and plug my other one right back in and get going with this, because I know that that one hasn't been changed. I bought the car with 26,000 miles on it. I did not change the PCV valve when I got the car. It currently has 197,000 miles on it. So therefore, it hasn't been changed until now. And there's our new PCV valve. So we know that that is now changed at current mileage, which is 197,000. We're going to drop that right back through there. Give it a little twist that it needs to drop itself in place. And then I'm just going to line her back up top here. Alright, so I have threaded that through. Got this brought back up. It's back onto the intake manifold. Now we're just going to grab a clamp, slide that back up into place here. It's pretty tight. Again, we don't want any vacuum leaks, so it's a pretty tight clamp to get over that hose there. So just snug it on there. Good. Then I'm going to drop all my plugs back onto each of my fuel injectors here. Make sure that each of them snaps soundly. And then my cover literally just goes over top of those tabs there. So we'll just slide that back in place. There we go, and then back down to the bottom. Alright, so here we are back underneath. There's our PCV valve, and you can kind of see the hole that it's going to need to go into. So I'm going to need to kind of drop the camera for just a second so I can get my hand up in there, line it up, start sliding that thing into place. Alright, so you can see that we're lined back up, just sliding in. I'm going to snug that in tightly, and then all I need to do is put my oil filter back on, and I should be good to go. That is the process for swapping a PCV filter or valve on your D16Y8 Civic engine. I guess some of those Japanese spec Integra all-wheel drives also had this engine, so you might look at doing this, although I'm sure you're going to have a heck of a time getting there with an all-wheel drive transfer case up here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, leave them below.